Hello, my name is Adil, and this is the homework for week one. Uh, it kind of makes sense to share the slides also, but here's the design that that I built with Lucid Canana. Bruce is not on the team anymore, but he did a lot of work up until September last year. So we track everything in our tool, which I won't share right now. But this is what we designed. Uh, these are all our inventions. That's our invention. At least our design. We don't have a patent or a corporation. It's no like it's just me right now. And then we modified it to make it a greenhouse in space and underneath the Earth's surface. So this was my presentation to event hosted by CSA also. So you see some flags at the bottom. So yeah, just a little bit of context and specific to the business model canvas. I believe this is my homework. Looking at the homework, so I've attached the canvas. Oh, anyways, so I'm doing the video now. Okay, so the first thing I'm going by the actual numbering from Alexander Osterwalder. So the first one is customer segments. And oh, first of all, sorry, I must say that I've combined the aerospace and healthcare side of things. And so the expectation is that the aerospace side of things is going to make money initially to start a global policy for healthcare in a quality sense, protecting the patient's privacy. And then as that evolves, that's going to become self-sustaining. But the two projects support each other, and the intention is they would start running uh, on the blockchain, and everything will be transparent, like everything. There is no exception. All communications, all interactions, all accounting. Okay, so I did combine the two together. Global policy for healthcare and the aerospace side of things is mostly focused on growing food in space and also moving Earth's industrial activity, particularly heavy industry, to space, which is a collective vision. Okay, so let's talk about the business model canvas now. Who are the customers? Individuals on Earth, because we're thinking of, I'm thinking now selling direct to customers, because just me right now, not some. Governments of different kinds, particularly the governments that are impacted by food insecurity. United Nations, because United Nations have a couple of key projects, the United Nations Food Program, FAO, actually Food and Agricultural Organization, other institutions, including UNHCR, in addition to that, private investors who are very keen on bringing investors on board, studying some investors for a while. So investors who aren't necessarily looking to make a huge return on investment here, but are more interested in seeing a world where there's abundance, particularly with food, quality, nutritious, pesticide-free food without wrecking the planet, because that's what we're doing right now. We're chopping down rainforest and forest in order to be able to grow crops. Okay, so let's move to number two, which is value proposition. The value proposition is that a wake group of projects, once it's incorporated and gets the gears in motion, is going to solve global hunger in a quality sense of the word imaginable, building up on my previous comments, and all the sub problems that stem from the above mentioned, malnutrition, stunted growth, possibly wars. Wars could be a food and water insecurity could drive violence. So, but that's not identified directly. And just restore human dignity by solving global hunger. Yeah. So I won't talk about education. You need a belly, some food in it for you to learn. In addition to that, solving healthcare in order to reduce suffering, like I mentioned, in the quality sense of the word imagine. Let me talk now about the channels. By the way, I did the work before on this canvas in case somebody's wondering, oh, my battery's going. So the channels, thinking of working directly to the customers, as long as the economics make sense. So we're talking about sending stuff into space and back. So I have two block rules here. This is not very accurate math because we're not really at the $100 per mark range in now 2021. I made this block post a couple of years ago. 2020 to be precise, and I was hoping that by 2021, which is last year, we're going to get to this range. We're not at that range, but if you look at the delta is fast on a decade-long scale. So in the 1980s, it was $80,000 per pound. I don't know if it's per pound or kg, but let's find out. Yeah, it's per kilogram, right? So in the 80s, it was $80,000 per pound. Today, we're around $1,000 per pound. It depends on which source you look at. But this does not factor companies like Relativity Space who are making 3D printed rockets. So as rockets become 3D printed, we could get into a price point which is very low. In addition to that, NASA's took this from this is not the actual source. I gotta update this, but NASA is looking to get into these ranges by this time frame. I personally think it's going to be a lot faster because of certain companies jumping into this arena. So yeah, how am I going to reach my customers? Directly, because as long as the economic makes sense. As well, as I mentioned, running the whole organization on top of the blockchain. This is sub idea. Like, I don't know if it's actually going to, like, it's a little bit of, basically, I wanted anyone to be able to contribute to the project anywhere because I've seen this happen for Wikipedia, NASA Space Apps Challenge, and other crowdsourced initiatives. And I was thinking there's something profound here. I won't go into all the details, but there's a really good book. It's called The Starfish and the Spider by Ori Braffman, and applied for ethical purposes and universally good purposes. I think it's a powerful development. So it wasn't necessarily about crowdsourcing, it was about distributed teams. But that was one of my core my intention was to put it on the blockchain. For the reasons that I cited. Number 4. Sorry about that. See if you plug my laptop in, otherwise I'm at the library to store it. Okay, so moving on to customer relationships. I got to work on this again, but my belief is the score takes care of itself. They'll wash. I don't know if the reviewers has read this book, but basically you take care of your team really well, and your team takes care of the customers. And having worked at organizations like Amazon, where customer developing effective customer relationship is at the heart of all business activities. Uh, I won't share my personal thoughts. I think Amazon does a phenomenal job taking care of their customers, but not so great of a job taking care of their employees. I say this with utmost respect for all the leaders there, including the leaders some of the leaders I work with. But to come back to the topic, investing in programs like employee wellness and well-being training, having documentation in place for the customers the employees to focus customer and solving the problems that stand in the way of the employees and stakeholders towards doing so is the way to go. So my thinking is to do a set of activities in these ranges: employee wellness, well-being, and hiring individuals that are focused on customer obsession, customer success, account managers, so on and so forth. Okay, so number 5. Revenue streams. Revenue streams are for on the awake aerospace side of things. Initially, I think it's going to be difficult to. There's something like because we want to grow food in space and set up industry in space. So there's two ways to think about it. That revenue would come through the actual sale of the produce on the agriculture side of things. On the real estate side of things, revenue could come from the leasing of the space or the renting of the space, like an Amazon AWS model. So instead of setting up your own machines and running them to host your website or your app, you now rent space from Amazon Web Services. That's what AWS stands for Google Cloud. So a similar kind of approach, but on actual physical real estate. So anyone who wants to grow food would lease or rent facilities from us, or for industry of that. So these are different facilities. Obviously, they're not mixed together. It's hypothetical as it would be right now. So that's like a short. So direct sale of food and allocation of real estate. Yeah. Okay. And on the healthcare side of things, policies, selling policies in order to generate revenue, whereby the policies are tiered of a different tier, depending on this area definitely. We haven't working on the set of projects last year. Most of the focus was on the aerospace side of things. I would say 96%, not by design. It's just that with a 1.5 person plus team, that's where most of the focus went. We have to get the aerospace things going in order to get the project off the ground. Basically converting back of the envelope ideas into designs, not products and services yet, but designs. Moving on to number 6 is the key resources. What would I need to make the idea work? Sales, most important. And that's something I learned from a foundations course from Draper University last year. Initial seed round. Initially, this was 10 to 25K, but I will need more capital because I want to see this happen more efficiently. Let's put it this way, so we can start seeing the impact on the time scale we're looking at from a lot of different perspectives, including climate change. good people to join, as well as the creation of a lab whereby the experiments can be conducted, and go from there. With the noting that initially the manufacturing may have to be outsourced because the kind of machine we're looking at, whether it's additive manufacturing or something, I should say I am looking at, is quite expensive. 3D metal 3D printing company that I'm talking to, and they're with the entire package, their whole thing is like $300,000 US. So yeah, initially the manufacturing would have to be outsourced. That's not a problem. There are companies that do that. We have to do a financial modeling aspect to it, whether the iterations are going to be cheaper with in-house with the manufacturing capability, or is it cheaper to outsource it initially? Obviously, the business model is going to be validated as time goes by talking to customers. That's a reminder for myself. And the business model might change as I talk to more customers. Number 7, key activities. Developing the sales cycle. Let me just zoom in a little bit. Development of the AMU, which is this design right here. It's a 3-component design whereby most of the activities happen here. Manufacturing, assembly, tear down, different facilities for different things. And this is how you move stuff between different AMUs. It stands for Autonomous Manufacturing Unit. There's no human inside of this design. And the fuel would be provided by business. It says maybe space-based solar power picks up so that we can have a wider array providing energy to these machines. US Navy is working on that. Chinese are catching, or China is also working on space-based solar power, possibly on others. John Mankins is a leader in that space. I know very little about space-based solar power, pretty much, but yeah, but I know some key folks without going into details. I don't know them personally, but yeah, energy has to be solved in order for this to take off. Okay, what's number 8? Number 8 is key partners. The key partners obviously would be the world's leading space agency. So in the free part of the world and the allies, these are some of the agency. That's NASA, CSA, Europe, European Space Agency, Japan, and South Africa. Because saw some good things there from the last year's space operations conference virtually. Australia should also be here. Also UK, and China. I had China here also because I think China is a key part of the future. So hopefully the geopolitical situation stabilizes so that we can all work together. I'll stop here for now. I would love for it to be global and inclusive, as inclusive as possible, whereby people are working together to work in outer space for peaceful purposes. The secure and safe operations for any domain are very important. So there has to be like some oversight from a policing perspective. I don't mean this in the context of aggression, but to actually counter aggression. And my thinking is that potential prospect of countering potential aggression, whether however it makes it on the spectrum, all the way from pirates in space to other threats. So working with military institutions will be able to secure and safeguard the domain of outer space is key. And yeah, I don't know how that's gonna work, but obviously I would need the necessary approvals to that. And I think this is why it's important to engage as many space agencies as possible, so that through the space agency and the foreign policy, how it all works together. The more energy is focused on growing food in space and setting up industry in space. yeah, I think I'll stop here. Yeah, made some comments on a community called LSIC. They have a forum. So they have these workshops. They actually host these workshops through Miro actually. So I have given the question of possible the possibility that we may make the same mistakes as a species in space, or like how do we limit the prospect of that so that we don't make bigger mistakes in space. And the design is it incentivizes all participants to focus on the enablement of realities in outer space so that it's for wholesome purposes in a universal sense of the word imaginable, growing food and setting up industry for good and possibly getting our energy, having an energy presence by harnessing space-based solar power or like a hydrogen economy, so things like that. On the healthcare side of things, very interested in like keeping an eye on like the developments in deep learning and machine learning in general to see how these developments can be leveraged to create a basically provide healthcare, lower the cost for healthcare spend and diagnosis. I think that would be the way to go, or at least on the diagnosis side of things and possibly research side of things as well. Because I heard one of the founders of DeepMind, the company owned by Google, who I don't have any association with. I don't have any official association with it. But the founder of DeepMind said they were working on simulating. They were thinking of working on simulating a virtual cell, and then go from there. They already do some good work with protein folding. I have done some good work with protein folding. So yeah, this is my business model canvas. Oh, sorry, I forgot the cost structure. So the cost structure question is how much am I planning to spend on the product development and marketing for a certain period? So we need somebody to carry our stuff, for lack of a better word, into orbit and beyond. If the presence on the lunar underground surface, then I would need somebody to carry that payload. I don't think it's a good idea for me to go in the launch business or re-entry business. There's already a lot of company jumping into launch business, other than the names you see in the media. There's company beyond like Relativity Space, SpaceX, and Blue Origin, and I think it's a hotly contested space. Re-entry business, same, because of reusable rockets. There are other companies jumping into this arena. Actually, there's this one company, and yeah, but I won't talk about them. Some of these very launch and relaunch companies are also starting to think about industry and space. And so I think this is going to be a hotly contested area. I think. So, but yeah, so I'll leave it at that. On the for both of the projects, so that was for the aerospace side of things. For both of the projects, the cost would be in the form of salaries, R&D specific work, which is research and development, and the further evolution of the business plan. So let's call them projects or startups. However we make the pivots in a Steve Blank sense. So I don't know how long I took. I think it took 20 minutes. I hope this is not too long. I didn't see a time bound description here. It just says link to the video. So this is going to be my video. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, feel free to call me or email. Thank you. Have a good day.